How's it going, everybody? Welcome to week 3 here. Getting into Egypt, new civilization. We've talked about sort of review a little bit from the beginning, the eons of time, Big Bang, to complex societies, to Mesopotamia. So hopefully, you have a better idea of that trajectory, and also a little bit idea of Mesopotamia as well. Kind of goes back to the discussion posts from last week. I gave back comments to everyone on those. So take a look at my comments. Hopefully, it makes a little sense. Um, I think the big thing is, and you'll just kind of get used to this as we go throughout the semester, but just kind of make sure you're including specific examples from the course materials in your responses. I kind of tried to note that a little bit in my comments. So, like the first one, Neolithic, Paleolithic. A lot of people describe that very well, but you kind of left out some of the date ranges for these. Like, when was the Paleolithic? When chronologically did the Neolithic transition occur? And then, because that's important, because that answers the question why, with particularly sort of environmental issues as well, changes of environment and climate affecting sort of human shifting to more permanent settlements. Or maybe mention one or two Neolithic sites. I mean, in the lecture there, I kind of go through different ones, all so kind of showing that all throughout the world, these complex societies started shifting simultaneously, right? Which tells us something was going on a larger, more global scale there. Two, like Mesopotamian kingdoms, cities, trade networks. Again, a lot of good ideas and summaries, but there was, I kind of mentioned in my comments, like, when you're looking at these kingdoms, what are give me some rough outlines of dates. I mean, it's all in the lecture material. I mean, you can just pull up that lecture as it's in as the PDF, and just kind of take that information and put it in the discussion post. That's what are some names associated with Babylon? When was the Babylonian empires? Who is Hammurabi or Nebuchadnezzar? Who is Ashurbanipal and Assyria, right? And so just kind of Nineveh. Who are these? Who are the Hittites? So, and when did they rule? These kind of information that is just there. So get used to kind of including that information there. And then the last one there, the readings. Some people, most people did a really good job in engaging with, giving examples of laws that express this social the society of Mesopotamia. Similarly with Epic of Gilgamesh, though again, I mean, some people kind of broadly generalized sort of the summary of Epic of Gilgamesh, but the reading was chapter 3. So what in chapter 3 stands out, and you can kind of apply that. We have another discussion question this week. Same sort of thing, right? So the first one is what is similarities and differences between Mesopotamia and Egypt. Hopefully, you're starting to see those, right? For example, both have rivers, but they're very different in how they function. Particularly, Egypt it's relatively predictable. It floods once a year and then brings all this nutrients in, and then people grow on top of it. When the flood's coming, nobody can grow foods. They go do other things like build huge pyramids or temples, right? Or have festivals, right? So both similarities, both have rivers, very different. Both have writing systems, but the way they write is very different as well. Both have religion, but as we see from the lectures, the religion of Egypt is very different than that of Mesopotamia. One big feature of Egyptian religion was this idea of the afterlife, and that is also sort of part of this sort of social cohesion. Whereas in Mesopotamia, social order was very strict, based on rules and laws and punishments. Whereas in Egypt, we have like a little bit different system, where this idea of this life and the afterlife, this idea of mat, this harmony that people live in or attempt to live in, that when everyone's working together, there's sort of social harmony. And if you're being a good person and praising the pharaoh and performing things you should be doing, right, you will then enter Aru, this afterlife, but you need to be mummified for it. So that's how it kind of all sort of plays together. So similarities, differences there. The second one is this Akhenaten documentary. So Akhenaten's a very interesting figure. There's many pharaohs. I'm not sure exactly how many pharaohs are there in Egypt. There's 31 dynasties. There's a lot of pharaohs in each dynasty, 3,000 years of history. But Akhenaten's a very interesting pharaoh. His son Tutankhamun is probably more well known because of his tomb that was discovered in 1924. But we get to learn why that tomb was so full of stuff. why it's because he was Akhenaten and changed a lot, challenged a lot of Egyptian society. But then when he died, people wanted to kind of go back to the way it was. So if somebody 5 years from now asks you, do you know any pharaoh? Can you name one pharaoh from Egypt? From this week on, you can say, oh yeah, Akhenaten. You'll have that. And then last one there, sort of Egyptian figure. There's a lot there. I mean, a lot of people are probably a little familiar with Egypt. So if there's a particular god or other pharaoh that you're interested in, or some figure from Egypt history that maybe you might know or interested in, go ahead and use that. But again, one big thing I want to get people in used to is verifying sites. So if you do use it, what site are you using? Where are you getting the information? How do we know that it's verifiable or credible? So that's that. And then the Egypt stuff I kind of sort of talked about. Oh, before we do, definitely look in the student resources section as well. I got some scholarship information there. Also posted some job opportunities if anybody's interested. But yeah, I think people were somewhat familiar with Egypt, or at least names of some pharaohs or some gods, Isis, Osiris. I gave a little video of that. I think I sort of talked about some of the main points in the discussion post, but kind of the first lecture, Egyptian civilization, sort of homogeneity. They all have the same language, religion. Their cities don't really have walls, so it tells there's not a lot of internal conflict. Whereas Mesopotamia, that's walls are very much part of the cities there. And the Old, Middle, New Kingdom. I think you get the idea there. That's easy to remember, right? Pyramids, what we know, kind of the shifting of before there were, was slavery. It was the slaves built it, and now with more evidence, we're thinking, there's much more processing here. In fact, it was probably part of people's life, right? And in cycles and seasons, and in times where there wasn't much farming to do, people and other jobs, they could come and work on these pyramids as worship to the pharaoh, which then gets them into the afterlife, all that stuff. Religion, I'm going to talk about that a little bit. Isis and Osiris, I give you a video on. Akhenaten, I've talked about. And then the last little ones like Nubia, Sub-Saharan Africa, how Africa is all connected through the Nile River. So I think that's it. All the main things for this week. Have a good rest of your week.